September 21st meeting of the Rappahannock County Planning Commission to order. And we'll start with a roll call. I see that Mr. Henry is here, Mr. Atkins, Ms. Smith, Mr. Sisk, Ms. Ritter, Mr. Schulen. I think we are all present, so thank you for that. And with that, I'd like to ask we all stand and pledge the allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then we have, I think, one set of minutes to review. Any feedback on those? Hearing none, I would entertain the motion to approve the minutes.
I so moved. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll abstain on that, Mr. Chairman.
I will too. Understand. Could you have that recorded?
Could I make a comment?
Please.
I would like to thank Marlena Lee for the good job that she does on keeping the notes in the minutes. And I know it's got to be a difficult job because some of us, like myself, we kind of babble around sometimes, not too clear with what we say, and she still does a good job of getting it down right. So I would like to thank her for the good job she does.
Thank you. I think we can all agree with that sentiment. So thank you, Mr. Atkins, and thank you, Marlena. Okay, so the next item on the agenda, we have a series of public hearings. Just to remind folks, we have changed recently to a process where we start this application review process with a public hearing, as opposed to recently when we had been doing a preliminary review. So for anybody who's been through this process before, you wonder why it's a little different. We did make a change to our ordinance that we hope to sort of streamline and accelerate the process to getting public input. I think the downside of that is we are addressing the application for the first time this evening. So thank you for that. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to open a public hearing on each of these applications on its own. And then after we go through the public hearings, we'll have a separate public comment process for any general comments that you all may have that aren't necessarily related to those hearings. So with that in mind, and we'll just take these in order, I would like to open the public hearing on special use permit 220703, the Harmony Manor B&B application. And before I open the floor, I would request that each of you come to the microphone, identify yourself, address your comments to the commission, and not to the applicant or other members of the public or the people you're really trying to communicate with. Please address your comments to us. And we do have a pretty good agenda tonight, and I see a lot of people here. I assume that means there's a fair amount of interest in speaking. So please try to limit your comments to 5 minutes. We're not going to be super strict, but I will demonstrate some discretion if we're starting to go on or repeat things that maybe have already been heard. So with that, I open the hearing, and I'll start by asking Ms. Summers if you wouldn't mind teeing this up.
Sure, thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Hendrickson propose a 5-bedroom B&B. The home is currently the home of the Hendricksons, as well as serving as Little Washington Winery Tasting Room. Clark Lane is a 30-foot private right-of-way. The Hendricksons have proposed to improve Clark Lane by repairing the roadway within the context of the existing right-of-way by removing the existing hard payment and replacing with millings. Previously, as noted in my staff report, there has been a history with this property. They were granted 2 permits for a B&B, one in 2011 and one in 2013, but both were revoked by revocation hearing before the BZA. The Rappahannock County Code includes regulation related to vehicular access to uses in the county. The listed pertinent regulations identify that Clark Lane, along which the applied for use is located, is currently existing in a condition that is non-conforming with the zoning ordinance. Allowing additional uses, particularly those that are not permitted by right, is not recommended by staff unless the access issues are resolved. Summarizing the zoning ordinance sections, the private streets article of the zoning ordinance states that when more than 5 lots are served, the access road shall meet type 1 standards, minimum BoardDocs specifications. Clark Lane currently serves more than 5 lots to include 7 existing single-family residences, with one having a collated agritourism use which draws traffic but was exempt from local zoning regulation itself relative to its establishment. Further, the entrance of private Clark Lane to public road system is located within the commercial general zoning district, and specifically within the general commercial overlay district. As was referenced by VDOT in the letter, access management concerns are present with the location of Clark Lane relative to the adjacent commercial exit from the cooperative farm store. The 2 entrances onto Route 211 are essentially immediately adjacent. The zoning ordinance states that in no instance shall the distance between entrances serving adjacent land uses be less than 40 feet. The zoning ordinance might not be able to force the reconfiguration of the current separation between Clark Lane and the exit to the cooperative farm store for current vested uses, but it does provide support for the county to not exacerbate the conflict by allowing additional traffic resulting from new uses that are not permitted by right, whether that new use adds 1 additional trip or 100 additional trips. In the event that the Planning Commission recommends approval and the Board of Zoning Appeals are inclined to issue the requested permit, the following staff recommended conditions should be attached. 1. Private Clark Lane should be upgraded to meet Type 1 road standards as identified in the RCC of the Rappahannock Code. 2. The entrance of private Clark Lane onto Route 211 should be upgraded to meet established VDOT access standards and entrance spacing requirements, and either be co-located with the farm cooperative exit or separated by a minimum of 40 feet as required by RCC 17038D3. 3. The use shall meet the required provisions of RCC 17066K. 4. The maximum number of adults permitted at any one time at the parcel, not including the resident managers, shall not exceed twice the number of lodging units. This is in section 17066K 9A. Events inviting non-over guests are prohibited. 5, the operator shall post or provide within the residential dwelling unit a clearly visible list of emergency information and the location of fire extinguishers or pull fire alarms in the residential dwelling unit offered for limited residential lodging purposes in the common areas of the building. The operator shall ensure that each unit is equipped with functioning smoke and fire detection systems and carbon monoxide alarms as required by applicable laws and codes for the residential dwelling unit. 7, the operator shall provide evidence that he has no less than $500,000 of liability insurance covering the limited residential lodging use, or that each limited residential lodging use is conducted through a hosting platform that provides equal or greater coverage for such use. 8, food service will only be offered to the overnight guests of the facility. 9, an annual well water sample shall be submitted to the Virginia Department of Health, and the use shall operate only with results that are satisfactory to the Virginia Department of Health. 10, permit terminates 2 years after issuance. 11, permit terminates upon the sale or transfer of the property. And 12, permit shall be subject to revocation in the event of noncompliance with the local, state, or federal laws, regulations, or ordinances.
Does that conclude your report?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that. So with that, I will ask if they're,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I'm acquainted with Mr. Hendrickson and his wife, and I'm going to recuse myself. My daughter's employed down, so
Okay.
for this particular block, I'm going to recuse myself.
Thank you. That seems like the prudent choice. Thank you for informing us of that. With that, I would open the public comment. Would anyone like to speak?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
thank you for the opportunity today. My name is Carl Henriksen. Donna and I are the owners of Harmony Manor B&B LLC. We moved to Rappahannock County in October of 2020 after 2 successful careers in the private sector. Donna writing press releases for the Pentagon Guys and me selling software. We opened Little Washington Winery in November of 2011. We opened Wine Love's Chocolate Shop in 2013. We purchased Harmony Manor in October of 2017, and we added a brewery in 2020. And we added a disc golf course that traverses both properties, Christmas Tree Lane and Clark Lane, in 2020. In short, we've invested heavily in Rappahannock County. We do things in a first-class manner, and that is demonstrated by a number of awards our products have received. Most recently, Savor Magazine gave us a Platinum Award for the best winery experience in Virginia. What's more, the disc golf course has just received the 3rd best disc golf course in the world by UDisc Magazine, and in 2019 the Inn received the best inn in the DC metropolitan area by the Washington Award Program. In short, we do things well. We moved here for the scenery and the community, which has been quite welcoming. Granting the SUP will offer a number of benefits to the county. First, additional tax revenue. That's the most important piece. Specifically, the lodging and room tax will generate $4 for every $100 in sale. I think it's actually $4.50, but I can't remember. Compared to the $1 in every $100 generated by the sales tax. By granting the license, the county would receive both the sales tax and the lodging tax for around 5%. Why is this important? When I was on the board in Loudoun County, I had the experience of meeting with 2 bond agencies for our bonded indebtedness for our school construction program. One was Moody's, one was Standard & Poor. They both were adamant that the county should work hard to diversify our primary revenue sources away from real estate dependency to a more diverse revenue structure. For Rappahannock County, the same should be true. Tourism can be part of one of those diversification efforts. According to the Park Service, this is a fascinating number. According to the Park Service, in 2019, the businesses within a 60-mile radius of the park enjoyed a $1.2 billion direct benefit. That's a huge amount of money. Direct money right back into the county. For the employment opportunities, we'll have the opportunity to add 2 new staff people with the help for ground maintenance and an innkeeper for other tasks. Depending on growth, this number will rise. Direct economic benefit to other businesses in Rappahannock is pretty compelling. When we were running it as an inn, we spent a fair amount of money with before and after for breakfast dishes, and that worked very well for us, and it worked very well for them. In addition to the economic benefits, we are currently under contract to have Clark Lane repaired. Currently, it's a mess and needs to be repaired, if for no other reason than to protect our investment, not necessarily anybody else's, but our investment. Mr. Rexinger demonstrated this fact when he was selling his property at the top of the hill, because the road was, again, a mess. In such a bad shape that he had the pavement patched, not repaired, merely patched, and that was a sloppy solution. And it shows today. Drainage is incorrect, the pavement is not repairable with farm equipment that I have on hand. More importantly, the road needs to be repaired so that emergency vehicles can get to our house. That access will be facilitated by eliminating the S-curve that exists about halfway between 211 and our driveway. Today, the damage is mostly the cause of the trees that are in the right-of-way and forcing cars to destroy the opposing shoulder to avoid damaging their cars. In addition, the S-curve that creates a blind spot that will be corrected making Clark Lane safer for the entire community. If the license is granted, we will be joining a number of other wineries slash B&Bs, Chester Gap Winery, Armada Winery, Sharp Rock Vineyards, Hopkins Ordinary, Blue Rock Inn, Glen Gordon Manor, Blue Door Inn, Foster Harris House, Chateau Charlemagne, and others, who all have lodging on their property. As for the staff comments in particular, Ms. Summers has raised 12 issues. 1 and 2 appear to be the efforts on the county staff to have the Henriksons rectify something that was created by the county and VDOT when the subdivision was originally created. Frankly, that is not our responsibility. Item 3 has been addressed by the VDOT comments in the letter included in your packet, aside from some concern about large events and the community trash sign. They do not have a concern. Items 4 through 9 are required by the health department, and we will abide by those. Item 9 is the most problematic, where the staff is suggesting that the license be reviewed again in 2 years. From a fairness perspective, are there any other regulated B&Bs with the same burden? Equally as important, we are planning on some fairly significant upgrades on the property that will require some additional debt. When a banker sees that limited duration, the loans will be denied or held within that window of review. So the upgrades to the property and the facility will be severely jeopardized. As an aside, I'm a fan of Milton Friedman, who argued that a successful business translates to a ton of benefits for the community where that business resides. Those benefits can be seen in everything we do on this property, and in particular, we have cleaned up Clark Lane, removed all the brush to make the approach to the property more attractive. We cleaned up the pond and creek draining out of the pond, and the property is mowed and farmed in an environmentally conscious manner. Don and I hope that you will recommend approval of this project. And thank you very much. I'll be happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Henriksen. We may take you up on that offer at some point, but
Okay,
for now,
cool. Thank you.
We'll like to hear from the members of the public. Would anyone else like to speak regarding this application? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Yoko Barsky, and from Hampton District, right next door to the Henriksons, just right above them. As Mr. Henriksen said, it's a very successful business, and we have nothing against the successful business. We actually encourage a lot of small businesses in Rappahannock, except there are some legal things involved in this. As you have seen in Ms. Summers' report, when they purchased the property, it came with 2 special use permits, one for 2 bedrooms, another one for 3 bedrooms. Both of them were revoked by the BZA unanimously. And then they were also applying for this country inn to use up to 6 bedrooms or something. That application was also unanimously denied or rejected by the Board of Supervisors shortly after that. And the reasons for the revocation was they rented more than 3 bedrooms. Only 3 bedrooms were allowed. Number 2, they changed the use of property by adding farm winery and agritourism. And they ran for-profit events. Those were also specific conditions for the revocation. They also leased a part of the property to Little Washington Winery next door. Same owner, but it was a separate property, just to run a wine tasting room, which was also in violation of the SUP conditions. And one of the most important things was that traffic on the access road. And it was determined to be far greater than the originally anticipated at the time of the permit, because of this increased traffic, increased intensity of use of the property. And worst of all, they said at the BZA hearing that they intended to continue this violations. And today, they still continue all these years. That for over 3 years, they have been continuing this. So we have been, the residents of the Clark Lane have been suffering from all these illegal activities for the last 20 years. They also, nothing really have changed except they added another disc golf, as Mr. Henriksen said, without the permit, by the way. The golf course in Sperryville had to get the special exception permit, I believe. They don't have this permit for this, for the disc golf, nor the agri-tourism. There's a big liability disclaimer sign on Clark Lane, but VDOT already said that Clark Lane entrance does not qualify for agri-tourism, no winery. It's allowed for B&Bs, but not for winery and agri-tourism. That was on the VDOT letter of September 17th and 2019. And the VDOT also suggests several, VDOT on the letter has a list of suggestions and maybe recommendations to do on the road and the entrance. But none of those suggestions have been taken up or answered by the applicant. And Ms. Summers said that she sent a notice of violation, but we don't see any changes on the activities or nor what the result of the notice was. I don't know if there has been any follow-up. So I don't know what good this SUP revocation does if it's not enforced. And that is part of the county, I think. When you will be reviewing the zoning ordinances that might be in the progress right now, this enforcement needs to be considered for the review. And Mr. Henriksen says he wants to widen the portion of Clark Lane. But he attached only the survey plan of the easement. Does not have the site plan of the road, no details, or specifications, nor the permit. For the road like that requires a permit as well. So what are we, the residents, supposed to believe how the road is going to look like? What do we to expect? What are we to expect? I just don't think this application is complete. So I would ask the commission to either table or send it back to the applicants to fill in the complete applications. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak on this application? No one?
Yes, I will.
Yes.
I'm Brian Schultz. I live on Clark Lane. When the Hendricksons purchased that property, they knew that the neighbors had all been fighting against it, and they didn't care. They went right in and did what they wanted to do. The trees were there when they purchased that property. Those trees were only put up for privacy because previously it was run as an illegal B&B. This is the first we've been told of the plan to widen the road, and we own the longest portion of the right-of-way. The Hendricksons don't seem to care about the residents. Bad neighbors on Christmas Tree, bad neighbors on Clark Lane. The Hendricksons have not been rehabilitated or apologized for their previous bad behavior that had the SUP revoked. Why go through this again with them? We have Frisbee Golf advertised from sun up till sundown. We have winery traffic. We've been through this before with the B&B. B&B traffic goes up and down all day and night. One guest tried to open the door on the Nash House above Harmony Manor after midnight. We were recently sent a letter from the Hendricksons referring to themselves as the Clark Lane community to remove and trim the trees in the right-of-way. No trees are blocking ingress and egress. Bully tactic. My wife and I have been sued in the past by Harmony Manor over the trees. We were encumbered in litigation for several years before the lawsuit was dropped and thousands of our dollars was spent. This is not the Rappahannock way. I wake up on Sunday morning with Frisbee players screaming and hooting and hollering. Frisbee people are less than 50 yards from our front porch. This could happen to you if you have a neighbor like this on a private lane with agritourism. I ask you not only to deny this application, but limit the agro usage they're doing now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Glenn.
Page Glennie, Jackson District. As pointed out by the zoning administrator and Ms. Barsley, these people are habitual violators of the zoning ordinance. And nothing has been done, really. I mean, they were revoked, but no action was taken. I mean, y'all are busy working on redoing the ordinance. Why bother doing that if you don't fix the enforcement of the ordinance? That would be problem number one. Problem number two, that road, all right? They say the trees block it. I go up and down that road with an F-250 pickup truck with mirrors all the way out, and I have no problem at all, other than the potholes that have been created. If they were so anxious about doing something, why haven't they fixed the road to date? At least graded it, at least put millings down on it now. But they don't care about their neighbors. They don't care about anything. Giving them this permit is really a bad idea. It's like giving a spoiled child candy. Don't do it. I again it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So much of this rides on the entrance and the roadway of Clark Lane. As you know, that Clark Lane is a 30-foot right-of-way. It's got an 8-foot, perhaps 10 feet hard surface so that cars cannot pass one another without somebody turning off the road. Christmas Tree Lane, as on the other hand, where Little Washington Winery is located, is a 50-foot right-of-way with a 20-foot hardtop where cars can actually pass. The thing about the Hendricksons, they keep their properties beautiful. I love people coming up from the suburbs and probably having wine, watching the sunset, looking at the view from their patios. The only problem is they're not used to dealing with an 8-foot hardtop. And in some cases, some of you have probably gone up there just to check out this before the hearing. Some of it's only 2 feet wide. And so it causes all kinds of problems. They don't know what to do. They don't know who has the right of way. They don't know where to turn off. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I don't know this for more like certainty, but all of us have neighbors in Rappahannock County. Most of us know when our neighbors are not home. At Clark Lane, our neighbors are not home 2 or 3 or 4 nights a week. In other words, that's not their residence. Their home isn't on Christmas Tree Lane. The other thing is having an LLC as a neighbor. They said in the application that the homeowners, the neighbors who are not notified, they've not notified us about anything. This may be the curse of Harmony Manor, but their life has been difficult. They've got such a beautiful, beautiful property. We wish there could be a success, but it can't be a success if the 30-foot right-of-way it continues. If they're going to make any changes to that right-of-way, I suggest that they do that with a site plan and let us know, because we cannot comment on this application otherwise. The entrance has to be probably upgraded, and I'm gonna leave it at that. It's just that the beneficial use. I never thought when I moved from Bethesda, and I'm a recovering attorney, I never knew that when I moved here that I'd be moving and a Frisbee golf course would go on next to me. And, you know, Babylon Bee, some of you know who they are, they said in one of their articles, Frisbee golf, newbie, brand new Frisbee golf players try to play not stoned and not drunk. And it's not like golf. They hoot and holler and have great fun. We don't mind that. Almost all of that is not a concern to us because we're above them. Even if they have an event where they have amplified music, it still doesn't bother us. The only thing that bothers us is this continual traffic on a road that goes from 2 feet wide to 6 feet wide to 8 feet wide, and having guests that come from all over the place, not knowing how to navigate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Marion Jenkins, and we live in the first house as you turn on Clark Lane. Our biggest concern is we have dogs. We have grandchildren. From the moment people turn on that lane to go to that winery, they're speeding. When they come out of there, they're speeding. When they have to get over, where are they getting over? Right next to our yard. What if one of the children rolled a ball in the road? Oh, sorry, they were drinking wine. You know, it just has to be more done than just saying, don't do it. Because every time they come and you guys say, okay, we'll come back again, they continue running life as usual. So why are we doing this? Thank you.
Anyone else? I think if you've had your public comments, I don't want to start a back and forth. We may have questions, and I trust that the commissions may come back to you on some of these things. But thank you. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing on this application and turn to my commissioners. We haven't functioned in this configuration for a while. We have several new members, but the way we've generally operated is to give the representatives of the local jurisdiction first dibs to go either first or last in their comments. Mr. Siska's recused himself. I don't know, Ms. Smith, if you would like to go first or last or not at all in your comment.
It's not.
Oh, it's not in your, I'm sorry. It's actually in
The House District.
Mr. Haynes.
to your left. Sorry. Everything west of Castleton is Sperryville. I'm sorry. Mr. Henry.
I'll go last.
Didn't mean to deprive you of that opportunity. Would anyone like to speak? Why don't I start that way? Would anyone like to start us off here among the commissioners.
I'd like to know just what the extent of the road repairs and how wide you intend to make the road once you've engaged in trying to repair it.
We have a 30-foot right-of-way. There is a 10-foot roadway. Okay, so there's two different things that go on there. There's a right-of-way and there's a 10-foot roadway. That roadway was paved, I'm not sure how long ago, but the pavement has deteriorated. Mr. Rexford, who was trying to sell a property at the top of the hill, was having difficulty doing that because of the caliber or the condition of the road, so he patched it, and that has been reasonably good until now. The 30-foot right-of-way is going to have a 5-foot edge on either side, and then there's going to be ground cloth, cement, and 4 inches of millings out to 20 feet. And so it's going to be a vastly improvement. There are places in the right-of-way, which I think this is the county's responsibility. I don't understand how this happened, but there are places that roadway is outside the context of the existing certified survey roadway, right-of-way. And that will be repaired as well. Where it shows up most definitely is in the S-curve. As it curves over to Brian's property, it steps out of the right-of-way. And we're going to correct that, we're going to fill it, we're going to straighten that road out, and it's going to have essentially a 20-foot wide roadway. And if any of the other participants would like to write a check for that bill, they're more than happy. I'm more than welcome to let them see what this is going to be. Now, the process was a tad more cumbersome than I expected it to be. I've had the surveyors out there 3 times. First time to mark the west edge so that I could tell Brian his trees are in the right-of-way, and they are in the right-of-way, and those trees are destroying that roadway because people are moving to the left on the opposing shoulder to get out from underneath those trees and stop marking up their cars. Then the permitting process that John is going through, they said they need elevations and they needed the west edge and the east edge defined. And so we've done that, and it's my understanding, I haven't heard from John yet, but it's my understanding that the application for the permit was submitted on Monday. It's also my understanding that the elevations need to be shipped off to Culpeper, to the Soil and Water Conservation guys. They editorialize on where the silt fences are going to be, all downhill, and that's what the elevations are for. And once that happens, the silt fences go in, and we start construction. The construction will occur at our driveway, and it will move back in 500-foot increments so that nobody gets denied an opportunity to access either our house or anybody else's house.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from, or comments, discussion from commission?
To the applicant?
Or in general?
Well, while he's on the road, can I ask him a couple
Please.
questions about the road? When you said essentially 20 feet, what does the word essentially mean here?
Well, we have 5 feet on either side, and we're going to try to hold that as grass, and the rest of it's going to be millings.
So you're going to do a 20-foot right-of-way?
Yes, we are.
Going to improve. Now, when you say cloth, concrete, and millings, explain the cloth and concrete.
Oh, gosh. The cloth is soil fabric to keep weeds from coming in. As I understand it from John, the dried powdered concrete is going to solidify and create a foundation for the millings, and the millings will be maintainable by my farm equipment.
When you say John, is that your engineer? Who's John?
Capielli.
Is he going to be your?
Yes, he's a contractor.
Okay. This is going to take an ENS permit?
Pardon?
This is going to take an erosion and sediment permit?
Yes, that's what we're working on right now.
So that detail, tell me what that details to me, if you understand that, what that details.
Okay, here's the process that we went through. The process was to get the survey. I got the survey on the east side to tell Brian his trees are in the right-of-way. Please get them out. Then when I signed a contract with John, he says, I need a full-blown survey on the east and west side of the road up to our driveway from 211. And then I need elevations. And the elevations, as I understand it, are the Department of Natural Resources device that they use to say, because John's going to put together a silt fence plan. And that silt fence plan needs to be approved by an engineer at DNS.
So what's the total footage that you're improving, rebuilding? The length, what's the total length?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know what the distance is.
You have to know the distance so you know what it's gonna cost you.
I know what it's going to cost me. That was the first proposal, and I can't remember what it was. I wrote a check and said, let's go.
So as I understand it, with a road, with the ENS permit, over 1,500 feet, it has to be completely engineered. A surveyor has to draw it out and engineer. Is that correct, Michelle?
Anything over 10,000 square feet.
Of disturbed areas?
Up to 10,000, and that's exactly what we've done.
And but who did the survey for you?
Curran? He's in Warrenton?
Okay.
Carson. There you go. Thank you.
It's the survey that's in the
Yes.
application. So you got a complete survey. You got to build that to the standards of the road. What's
Type 1.
Type 1.
I'm sorry, before we go off that, I'm just looking at the ordinance. It's type 2 roads that are required, not type 1. So
That's right.
I don't know. I think we need to kind of reset on that. Just look at.
None of this is required, as I understand it.
This is private roads or public roads other than primary or state secondary roads serving tourist homes and bed and breakfast shall meet the standards for type 2 roads set forth in section 170-86 and 170-87 as shown in appendix A to the Rappahannock County subdivision.
That's a new road. This is a repair.
No, it isn't. It's a private road serving a new bed and breakfast use.
This is a repair.
I don't see anything about repair. And this is an issue we face all the time. This was a topic of a great deal of discussion. Frankly, I didn't agree with this change, but we made it, and that's what the regulation now says, precisely because of these kinds of situations. So I think we need to reset.
So if I fill this with pavement, that's okay?
Sir, you need to comply with Road 2 standards because you need to comply with our zoning ordinance.
Okay.
While we're on that topic, I guess I'd like to understand the authority under which you're operating the Frisbee golf operation, frankly, because that seems like a recreational use. Is that, have you looked at that? Is that considered an agritourism use?
Yes, it is. And when I talked to John McCarthy, he said as long as you're not charging for it, and it's a family event with Donna and I and our my children. I have 2 kids, both of them are professional disc golfers. And David, who's the older, he designed the course, and we're not charging for it, so it could just as well be a tennis court.
So you're getting written up in magazines about a Frisbee golf course that is not commercial. That's just your private golf course.
That is correct.
But there have been events at that Frisbee golf course
That is correct.
for money.
It was a benefit for a not-for-profit. And that not-for-profit was the Professional Disc Golfers Association. I didn't see a dime of that money.
You know, I think there's been a lot of focus on money coming or going and benefits to the county and not nearly enough focus on our zoning ordinance. And I really, you know, we have the type 2 standards. We've been through this. We haven't really talked about it. And I don't know if there's a precedent, but what does it mean to revoke a permit if, you know, you're eligible to, I mean, does that not, I mean, and I ask this, I don't mean to be rhetorical about this, but this permit has been revoked several times, or it has been revoked, and I guess I would like some kind of legal guidance on what that means to us, because it should have some bearing, and there's probably some precedent for this, but.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
We are not running a B&B, period, end of discussion. We have no guests in there. We are running a tasting room.
No, I understand that, but I understand that you're proposing to run one.
Yes, it is. That is correct.
So you're proposing to do what you thought about doing or were you perceived to be doing and what your permit was revoked for doing in the past. That seems to me to have some bearing on our discussion.
That's fair. That's a fair question. That's a fair question. But the revocation was because we were performing a by right use, and that is agritourism. And the Code of Virginia says agritourism is not to be regulated by localities unless there's excessive noise. That's in the Code of Virginia. And we're a tasting room, and we're abiding by that, and we live in that house every night.
Please address your comments to the commission.
Okay, sorry.
Point of order.
Now, my sense is that the BZA was using the SUP process to gain benefits regulating agritourism that they couldn't get otherwise. Did you follow that? Yeah. You cannot regulate an agritourism business, but you can set conditions on an SUP.
That's correct.
But those conditions cannot take away by right uses. And that's the contention right there. Those conditions cannot take a protected by right use, not protected in our zoning ordinance, but protected in the state code.
Have you,
Please.
have you applied to BoardDocs for a permit for the road?
No,
Why not?
because we're repairing it.
Your present road and entrance does not meet BoardDocs standards.
We are not going all the way down to 211 for that repair.
It doesn't make any difference. That entrance off of 211 does not meet BoardDocs standards. It's not a commercial entrance. In no way can, if it's a car coming out of Clark Lane and a car wants to turn off of 211 into Clark Lane, can't happen. It's not wide enough. So
the answer to that question is we have not done that.
okay, you need to do that.
I will talk to John about that.
Yeah, you need to do that. And really, yes.
I am a little perplexed. I am a little perplexed as the relative newcomer as to how that roadway got approved by the county and how that situation as it configures to the farm co-op and how those got permitted by the VDOT. I have no idea, but that being the case, then it seems to me that the county and VDOT would be expecting Carl and Donna to correct something that they made as a mistake, I think, years ago.
Now, I think the issue here, sorry if I may, just, you're here before us requesting a use that is not by right. I'm not sure the extent of that. I hear you about what a Frisbee golf course is, but I'm perplexed by that as an agritourism business. But having said that, I think you are before us to gain approval for a non-right use of a property that would be new in this application, even though there's been a tremendous amount of history
That
here.
is correct.
And so in order for us to, you're asking us to recommend approval of that use, and for that purpose, I think it is our responsibility to make sure that the property that you're asking to be used in that manner meets our requirements.
Fine.
And that, I think, is the matter before us.
Fair enough.
So thank you for that. Other questions or comments?
Yeah, I've been a newbie on this board. I took a trip this morning out to Clark Lane at 11 o'clock this morning. I drove all the way up. And yes, that is a deplorable road. I don't see how anybody keeps the front end on their vehicle. I don't see how they could do it.
You'll see some of them, they're driving on the grass now.
Well, yep, I wonder why. But just let me finish my story.
Okay.
Okay. I trucked on up the road, went all the way up, turned around, started back down, and probably about 1,200 feet to maybe 1,500 feet before I got to the entrance to go into watching the winery. Deer in the headlights. Me and a FedEx delivery truck, almost head on. There we were staring at one another. He couldn't get by me, I couldn't get by him.
That's what the 20-foot roadway will solve. That's what straightening the roadway will solve.
Yeah, it could, but it's not solving it now. It's not, and tell the way I look at that. But let me, so this gentleman, and he, being a FedEx driver, was probably a pretty professional driver. He backed about 1,500 feet, pulled in the winery driveway, let me go by. We threw hands up each other. I appreciated what he done.
Was that above the driveway for the winery?
Yeah. Okay, but can you imagine if there had been 2 tourists on that road, what would have happened?
That's why we're fixing it.
Okay.
That's exactly why we're fixing it.
That's good. But I think you said you've been here 20 years.
Not quite.
All right. Well, listen, how many?
12 years.
12, okay, 12, yeah. I misunderstood. And you've been very successful. And you, today you brought a lot of money into the county. And that's good. I commend you for that. But all that time, I look at this like a situation. You live in a community, and you, to me, from what I've heard, you really haven't gone out of your way to be a good neighbor. If you had, with all of your success, you would have already fixed this road, and we wouldn't be here talking about this.
Thank you.
Anybody, well, Mr. Hendrickson is here. Would anybody else like to ask a question, or should we continue our discussion?
I just have a few points to say. The verbiage in Michelle's staff report that really leaps out at me is not exacerbate the conflict with the less than 40 feet between the entrances of the cooperative and Clark Lane. That's a very dangerous situation. We have heard that there's not a remedy in the works for that, that still needs to be addressed. That, to my mind, is a primary concern. I did want to roughly just talk about taxation since it was brought up. Since my time on the board, we have increased our food and lodging taxes that local businesses collect for us, which we appreciate very much, to be able to realize and increase that stream of revenue. So I just think that folks need to understand that, yes, that form of taxation is important, but that doesn't mean we automatically approve every application that comes before us, because it means more money in the county coffers. It's also important to follow the ordinances in our comprehensive plan. I did want to draw attention to also, in addition to the 5 rooms, if there's 2+ staff members being added, plus possibly others frequenting the property to deliver goods or meals, that would drive up the number of trips per day also. I think it's already been said several times, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I've been up Clark Lane many times over the years in the public hearings and processes associated with this property. I went up it last night, and I honestly couldn't believe it had gotten worse. It's the worst I've ever seen it, and I didn't think that was possible. And I know in the past, I think when some of the original B&B permits were granted, one of the conditions of the permit was that bump outs be installed and maintained. And I can tell you that I was up that road several times in a period when those should have been installed and maintained. And they had been installed, but the grass was all grown over them, and they were certainly not maintained. And if I wasn't looking for them, I wouldn't have known they were there. So that's my report on the state of Clark Lane, and I think you all may owe me for some crown repairs because the potholes are really bad. In terms of the disc golf, I don't know what you were told, and I don't know if you got it in writing. It's loud. It's loud. I like disc golf personally. I have family members that play it. But when you throw the disc it clangs against chains before it falls into the basket, and that is loud. And we all know from many permits or applications that have come in front of us as a commission that sound carries strangely in the valleys of Rappahannock County. And while you might not think that it would be loud from point A to point B, it may be. Voices travel strangely from point A to point B in the valleys of Rappahannock County. So I just think that maybe the noise was not apparent when you made a request to have it, and I don't know if it's been permitted, but I think we certainly took up some standards for golf courses and driving ranges, things of that nature. I think having standards for this would be perfectly appropriate as well. I did also want to discuss some of the last conditions for the limits for the 2 years. And I just want to say, I think when you're handling an application, and I don't know that we're of a mind to take action tonight, but if we were of a mind to do anything, I think having a time limit is perfectly appropriate. It installs some brakes on the processes and gives the neighbors some recourse that if things do happen, that they have a way to register a complaint and know that a solution is in sight. I'm a big fan of imposing time limits on permits because good fences make good neighbors. If you know where your limits are, you're less likely to push them. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have any other questions for Mr. Hendrickson?
Are you farming that property?
Yes.
What do you grow on?
Hay and grapes. But I'm pulling the grapes out. We're going to plant this winter apples and peaches because that's what the original property was used for. So the grapes that we used were Arundel grapes. It's an experimental grape. Don't laugh at me, but Cornell calls it a spray-free grape. No, it's not. I was hoping with a spray-free grape that I would have something that would be a little bit more friendly rather than the other vineyard that we have where we spray every 7 to 10 days. I was hoping to get away with it spraying only maybe once a month, but we're spraying every 7 to 10 days and it's pointless. So there is an apple tree in there that has died. We're going to put apples and peaches and a whole variety of other things. Fiddle ferns down in the wooded area, a whole bevy of things. And hay. Hay will continue to be on that property.
Thank you.
All right, Mr.
Anything
Chairman.
else from Mr. Henry? Thank you.
Sorry,
go ahead.
We can continue with questions.
We can, yes, if you'd have more questions for the applicant or our discussion.
Will you pull up the soda? Particularly down towards the entrance. So it's my understanding from your presentation that you're not going to do all of Clark Lane. You're not going to make all. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you can't do like down the pipe stem that comes by the Jenkins house down to the state road. You can't do that?
No.
And the reason for that?
We've got the steep slope there. You've got a fairly nice roadway that accesses 522, and there's no point in that.
Is that 20 feet there already?
Don't know. I haven't measured that.
No, no.
So, and the standards that we have, Michelle, says exactly what in terms of this road construction?
Are we talking type 1 or type 2?
Whatever is required that he has to do.
My staff report lists that it should be upgraded to meet type 1 because it's more than 5 houses on that property, which would require, and I can pull that up in just a second.
I guess I'd like to understand why the bed and breakfast standards and tourist home standards wouldn't be the ones that apply, since that's what the special use is requesting.
Do you know for type 2, it has to be 50 feet wide and at least 12 feet wide, and it has much other standards with it.
Yeah, I feel like we have several matters on the table with respect to the road. One is which of the road standards actually apply, because I see no reason why it wouldn't be the type 2 standards.
Yeah,
and second is the discussion about the entrance. And I think the other thing we're kind of tiptoeing around a bit is, and I'm not too clear on this, but I'm going to say site plan. It seems to me that site plans typically provide a much more detailed look at the access points, but I'm not sure about that. It may be that the site plan rules only pertain to the parcel, but to me, the thing that we're lacking here that would be helpful is a site plan showing the details and the design for this road. I understand that it would be unreasonable to ask Mr. Henriksen to fix the road before he knows if he's going to get his use. I don't think it's unreasonable for him to be much more detailed in his intentions for the road and showing us the design for the road.
Mr. Light,
before we do it.
Let me interrupt.
Please.
We are repairing the road regardless of the outcome of this hearing.
Well,
Let me say that again. We are repairing this road regardless of the outcome of this hearing.
I appreciate that, and I'm sure your neighbors will too. But I will also say that, rather than getting into this like it's some kind of negotiation over a deal, we're really just trying to, make sure that
I understand that.
approve. But I do appreciate that, and I understand we're operating under sort of a different frame of reference than you are as an entrepreneur. Please, I appreciate and respect that. I don't know, Mr. Henry.
Anyway, I think this comes down to a very simple position right now. The applicant stated that no repair was being done to the property down, the road down along the Jenkins property and the co-op. So if that road presently does not meet the standards of what's required, and he's not going to do repair, then it's a no-go. We simply have to give a recommendation of denial because his proposal doesn't meet the standards of the road. It's as simple as that.
I tend to agree, except I feel like we haven't necessarily given the clear opportunity to Mr. Henriksen to demonstrate how this requirement is met.
Wait. He said he's not going to do any repairs, and if the present road does not meet the standards, it's a no-go.
He did say that, and that is the case. So
we need to verify here is which standards apply.
Is it type 1 or type 2? So
I think that's part of it, and this question about the separation of the entrance and the co-location, that was a new thing. So, I would consider any motion provided by my colleagues, but I think the minimum we should do is seek some clarity around these standards. But if others feel that, there's some other considerations here. Well, obviously some of the general standards about the fit and concerns about traffic and the surrounding properties are certainly have been raised on to question. For goodness sakes, we've been hearing complaints about this property ever since I've been on the commission, 10 years, 11 years ago. And not to put that all on Mr. Henriksen, but it goes to the point of, there can be a great business and there can be a site, and the great business might not fit on that site. You know, that is part of what the conclusion that we have reached in many of our recent decisions. And, you know, this is there's a lot of obstacles here that the path is to clearing is not clear to me.
But it does seem to me that until we know if it's a type 2 standard and what Mr. Henderson is proposing will meet that type 2 standard, then it seems to me that we should wait and see what the road actually looks like after it's been repaired. And also the issue about access is resolved from the to 522.
I mean, I think Mr. Henry's point is that, and I don't know if the applicant were, you know, I would want him to understand the implications of what we're talking about, but, you know, that's why I feel like we may not be in a solid position to act. I think we do need to understand, though, the bottom line is, I believe that it would be the type 2 standards that are met. I would love to get some more reliable conclusion than that. And if so, I think we would need to have a site plan or some further demonstration. And it sounds like your current plans aren't intended to meet those standards, which, you know, you might want to rethink if in fact those are the applicable standards. So I don't know if are we approaching the point where someone would? Yes, sir.
Here's the type 2 standard design.
Yeah, I think
that will save you a little bit of time. And type 1 is actually a more rigorous design. So that's the difference. Type 2 is just for B&Bs, if it's just by itself. Type 1, you have the other references. So it gets worse with the type 1.
12-foot shoulders, 2-foot.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, the existing entrance doesn't meet that type 2 standard.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that and the use of your equipment.
But I just
yeah. I mean, I think the question. I mean, I'm not comfortable with what we've discussed, concluding one way or another the right standard.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You know, this is a very interesting application, and it seems like this property has had nothing but history associated with it, going back to not so much the previous owner, but the original owner that built the house. And this it's interesting. There's no other property in the county that has generated as many complaints as this 29 acres has over my tenure here on the board. And the Board of Supervisors has been involved with this property for a very long time, and they've had the benefit of counsel. And the BZA, I believe this goes to the BZA after us. Yes, sir. And they have the benefit of counsel too. We have flushed out here tonight 2 potentially fatal flaws here that dooms this application, and that is the ability to do the type 1 road or the type 2 road potentially at the entrance along the Jenkins property up there, and also the fatal flaw of the 40-foot separation. So you got 2 deadly issues here that really kills this, and we flushed them out. And as we know, whenever we send anything to the BZA, they put their own hands all over it, and they do their process. And a number of times they simply ignore what we have done and come up with their own. But I think in this particular case here, we flushed out the problems here, and the chairman of the BZA is here. And I would make a motion that we send this on to the BZA with no recommendation. And because I think they'll do the same things we've done, and they have the more resources, particularly with a lawyer, funds for a lawyer, and they can flesh this out and do it correctly. So that's my motion, that we send it with no recommendation to the BZA, but they have our minutes. I think that saves time for the citizens and resolves this for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Is there
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I guess before we vote, one item of discussion for me is, and maybe it's just me, I have a certain, I take your point about efficiency and, you know, and the like, but I guess, you know, the idea when we have something that we're not clear on, to not get clear on that and then pass, because of that, pass it on, doesn't sit super well with me. But I guess.
Well, what has been demonstrated to us here recently is that, you know, applicants are tending to go to court more now than ever before. And it's just been a zoning case that's come out that everybody's aware of. And it was very complicated, very long, detailed there. And this property here, as I said, has a lot more history involved with it than anything else. And I think when this goes to the BZA, I think there's a lot more resources there, and there's time here in the next 30 days to address the exact standards and for a good execution of this at the BZA level, which is going to go to BZA anyway.
Yeah, I will grant you that the issues that we're discussing do seem to be somewhat more judicial than, you know, planning oriented. So.
Yeah, on the other hand, it does seem to me that we need clarification on the standards and what the options are in terms of the access to 522. I mean, BZA is just going to run into the same problems.
Well, I think we flushed it out now. I think this can be, staff can address this particular situation easily in the next 30 days to get it right and be sure they're on the right standards and documentation for that.
I would just say in the history of this property, let's not forget the last time this came up to the BZA with a recommendation for denial, it was approved anyway. So just because we recommend denial doesn't mean they're going to deny it. Or just because we recommend approval doesn't mean they're going to approve it.
In terms of the BZA.
That's correct.
And that's even more reason why it's just
that we're strictly, you know, advisory and late in the process. I don't mind passing it on without a recommendation. I do think that our communication, and I know we can count on Ms. Ritter to convey this to the BZA as well, that we have grave reservations about the quality of the road and that there may be insurmountable issues with the entrance that would irreparably damage this application. I would also strongly voice my support for a limit on this permit if there's any thought to issuing one. But in particular, the road standards and the impacts to the neighbors need to be very well documented to the BZA.
Any other discussion?
One other bit is I did want to mention, I know Mr. Whitson can't join us this evening, but we did hear the application for the Country Inn in March of 2020. And I did just want to mention that Mr. Whitson did make the motion at the board level where we also denied that application and followed the recommendation of the Planning Commission to do so, that he did bring up specifically Principle 7 in the comprehensive plan to promote only economic growth that assists in maintaining our existing balance and is compatible with the environmental quality and rural character and does not adversely affect farm operations, forestry operations, residential neighborhoods, the tourist industry, and the county's fiscal stability. It also is included under that policy number 4 he specifically enumerated to allow certain commercial business development that by its very nature must be located in sparsely populated areas near agricultural operations, near existing neighborhoods, or on specific sites to be so located if B is the critical portion here. The development does not impede traffic flow on roads and at intersections.
Sure. Thank you for that. I mean, it seems to me that with we have more than enough basis here. It seems to me, if we were so inclined to recommend denial, but if we're not there, and in the motion that's on and before us is to recommend. You know, with no recommendation, So unless there's further discussion on that point, we'll take a vote and go from there. Any other discussion? Mr. Henry? Yes, sir.
I have concerns that we've brought up here this afternoon from the board members. They will be presented to the BCA.
They will have the minutes and the tape, certainly. They will have the information before us. So it's not like we haven't contributed to the process.
And 2 members are here.
Okay.
And 2
just
members are here.
Another comment on that. If really, we could table this.
Yeah.
And require the applicant to provide more information for us to review. That could be an option.
That would be another
I agree with
path.
Mr. Henry about the legality of everything today, but, you know, I think we could have either or option there.
Okay. Well, for the moment, we have a motion on the table and seconded. I think I will ask for a roll call vote if I may. Mr. Shulin?
No.
Ms. Ritter?
No.
Mr. Sisk has recused himself, sorry. Ms. Smith?
No.
Mr. Atkins?
I second it, so I'll have
We're gonna stick with it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna vote no. And Mr. Henry, I assume you'll vote aye?
Yeah.
So the motion fails. Would somebody like to try another one?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion that Mr. Atkins suggested, which is that we table the issue until we have more information and see what's actually being built by way of a road, and give the applicant a chance to resolve the access question if it can be resolved. At 522, the entrance onto 522.
Both I assume you're, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but you're talking about the road standards, the applicable road standards, as well as the entrance issue.
Exactly.
So let's clarify to the applicant here what needs to be done.
Mr. Henry, sorry to interrupt, but could I ask we get a second before we talk discussion?
Was that a formal motion?
I believe it was a motion.
Yeah.
Could I have is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Henry, proceed.
So I think the applicant needs to understand, and the motion needs to understand, that the entire road needs to meet the standard. He can't pick and choose what portions of the road he's going to do. The ordinance says the entire road either has to meet the standards of type 1 or type 2. So the entire road has to meet the standards, number one. Number two, the entrance has to meet the standards, and it's not a crutch to say somebody in the past did something that was a problem. That is the reason why it is the way it is today. So he has to solve those 2 issues, absolutely, to move this application in any way forward. Is that correct? Is that correct?
I think that's correct, but I think part of the benefit to of the option that's on the table is that we could get some clarity around these standards. Obviously, some things have arisen during our conversation tonight that were not exactly what we understood coming in. But I take what you're saying.
What you just said was a little bit ambiguous, but it absolutely
at a minimum, those 2 things need to be.
It absolutely has to go down either path, type 1 or type 2. It has to go down the whole road to those standards, and the entrance situation has to be solved. Yes, okay. I think that is correct. Okay. All right. My point is simply that I don't know that there's not anything else that would be an obstacle. But I take your. I think those are the 2 points that I'm hearing in the motion before us that we're being asked to address. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would ask that we amend that motion, please, to include that specifically the requested presence of the county attorney for this public hearing, because with the rich history of this property and the unique challenges it poses, I think that's entirely appropriate to this process.
So, a fair point, although I did close the public hearing, so I'm not sure where that leaves us. If we table the motion, I guess there's nothing that would prevent us from reopening a hearing?
She didn't ask for it, we opened the public hearing, she just asked for the county attorney to be here.
Okay, for the meeting, but.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, fair point. So we have, would you, I'm not sure how that fits into the motion, but would you like to fit that into your motion? That we.
Yeah, I accept the amendment that the county attorney attend the hearing on this issue.
Attend the next consideration of this application.
Yes, please.
Okay. So we have a revised motion. Mr. Schulin, do you second?
I will second the revised motion.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Why don't we start out here? Mr. Henry? Aye. I too will vote aye.
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 Thank you very much. Unanimous support. Mr. Hendricks, I hope you were following that to a certain extent. If not, we can follow up. But I think the upshot of it is we want to hear some more about the meeting the requirements for the road. Thank you very much. Take 5 minutes, or why don't we take a 5-minute recess to allow folks who are only interested in that application to move on, and we'll reconvene in 5 minutes.
As you're going into the subdivision itself, it's 14 feet wide and Pine Drive is 12 feet wide. Any additional traffic for this B&B would be the same as a single family use, which it's designed to be, so there would be no additional impact on traffic on the roads.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. And with that, I will open the public hearing on this application. I believe the applicant that would like to speak.
Good evening. I wanted to thank the Planning Commission as well as any neighbors who may have come out to discuss my application tonight. I bought this house as a place that I can escape from Washington, D.C., where I live, to enjoy the nature as well as everything that the county has to offer and everything going on here. And with repairs more expensive and costly than I was prepared for, and the idea that I'd also love to share this experience coming out here and, you know, being in the county with others, I really wanted to kind of help with that. So I'm a real estate agent in DC, and I've worked in property management before, so I'm very well versed in, you know, doing this. This isn't my first rodeo. Also, you know, I don't want to disturb any neighbors, don't want to do anything. I've talked to neighbors, tried to figure out, you know, things we could possibly do, you know, still figuring out ideas of anything that, you know, they may have contentions with, you know, to help out and make sure that they have peaceful enjoyment of their properties as well as mine. Also look forward to getting on the board and, you know, joining the community so I can be an active member as well and help benefit the local area. So, you know, we're planning on doing everything clearly labeled, having all the rules out, all the other guidelines. So, yeah, that was, hopefully we can appreciate everyone's hearing of my application.
Thank you. We will let you know, as for the previous application, if we have questions. Would anyone else like to speak?
Thank you, Jimmy. I'm Angela Stout. I have lived in this county for about 22 years. We had moved out also from inside the Beltway before we moved to Marshall. We loved the country, so we moved even further out, fell in love with Rappahannock. Because we were a young family, it was hard to find a place in Rappahannock that we could afford, which ended up being Rappahannock Lakes because the properties that the houses sit on are very small. Majority of them are half an acre. We can see everybody, okay?
Would you mind sharing which address is yours?
Mine is 311.
311, okay.
309 was contacted. I was not. I'm catty corner to them. Cindy Pageant sent a letter of her concerns. She is president of the HOA, and I am one of the directors of the HOA. I'm also a neighbor, catty corner to this one, and there is also another property that is considering going a B&B that is catty-corner to us. So their property, Miss Janice, and then the next property, if you approve this, they're gonna come in and want to become an Airbnb. There's also 2 other properties considering becoming an Airbnb in this very small community. We are on top of each other. It is important that we have good relations with our neighbors. I've never met these gentlemen. They've never knocked on my door. I'm right there, I can see their house. Miss Janice, have you ever met these gentlemen?
I wait to them.
Ma'am, if we, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
understand what you're
I'm
doing,
sorry.
but if it
Okay.
just keeps it simple.
I'm just saying, we're out there, no one's spoken to me.
I understand.
Okay? So anyways, I want to address some of the concerns of the HOA. One of them is the roads. Right now, we are working with the fire department in Amosville because it's very difficult to even get the firefighters, the fire engine, through certain segments. We're working on it. But where we live, you literally have to take out half of our front yards to make it code compliant. Okay, so there's no place to pass. You have to back up into somebody's yard or somebody's driveway in order to get out. We're an older community. We do have kids there. We're a private community. Let me go back to my stuff. Older community, we've got only a few acres for each house. Those houses are only on half an acre. It's one of the few places anyone can buy here if they've got young kids and they're on a lower income. I believe it's the only subdivision in the entire county. Am I correct in that? No?
That's right. And Grandview.
Okay. Do you, well, we have roughly about 30 houses back there. And we have 8 who are not members of the HOA. We have a fishing lake and a swimming lake, both of which the HOA stock, maintain, and keep up. We do the mowing, we maintain the roads, we stock the fish. If we're going to start having strangers, and quite honestly, right where we live, there's no GPS, there's no cell phone. So people are knocking on our doors, asking where places are. Even the UPS, Prime, I'm one of the few people home all day. I can tell you exactly who's driving through. I know when the mailman comes home for lunch. He lives 3 doors down, okay? On the other side of this Airbnb, this considered property, is a military woman who is currently deployed for 3 months and is not in her property. Ms. Janice will speak for herself, but she is a part-time. Sometimes she's there, sometimes she's not. Her house is frequently vacant. The house next door to her is vacant, and a real estate agent is apparently considering making that an Airbnb. If these 3 become Airbnbs, literally 10% of the houses in the back are now having strangers come into our community, using our lakes, using the facilities. And our concern is, as an HOA, we have liabilities. If someone drowns, if someone gets in an accident, quite honestly, when it's snowing and there's ice out, there's one area that I tell my job, if I don't show up, I'm down in that ravine because I know I didn't make it, okay? Please come out, drive around the neighborhood, see how close the houses are. Half an acre is not much. Now, when people come out, they're going to want to fish, they're going to want to do fires. I don't know if they know how to do any of this. I don't know the safety issues. I don't know these people. I don't know where they came from, who they are, what they're going to be, how long they're going to be there. I know nothing. And if something happens, I don't even know their names. I've never met them. I don't have their phone number. I can't call them and say, hey, there's an issue. And is he going to drive from DC out here to deal with the problem? If you go in and you do research on Airbnbs, they say on-site owners are the best. Ones that are right there, local, who can keep an eye on their property. So there's not damage, so there's not parties, so there's not issues. We're a small community. We know everybody. And to start having people come back into this private little area is concerning. I honestly, 22 years, have never locked my doors. And now my husband and I are talking about putting locks on our doors. I don't want to do that. That's not where I moved to. It's not what I want. But I know people are going to come knocking on my door wanting to know where this place is. Okay, I'm going to finish up. Okay, we have a lot of absentee owners back there. We have weekend homes, vacation homes, and military people. A lot of the houses, what we have, are vacant during the week and on the weekends. Once people start getting back there and start realizing that a lot of these places are vacant, we're having trouble right now with people coming onto the property saying, oh, so-and-so said I could come back here. Oh, I lived here 5 years ago. They want to come back and continue using the lakes. So anyways, this is a problem we're facing. A couple of months ago, my husband went down on the fishing lake to go fishing. He said there were 15 people on the lake. And if you knew the size of the lake, 15 people fishing there. And let's keep in mind, see how close some of these houses are right here. And if you go look on Pine Circle, where the other Airbnb, they're sharing this little circle. And they're constantly, they don't have enough room for the cars, which is another issue that we're facing right now, is that we have to get cars out of the roads. And for houses with 2, 3, and 4 cars, there's no place to go. I've had to take my driveway all the way up my house, to the side of my house, to my fencing, in order to get our 3 cars in. Okay? So parking is an issue. Maintenance of the property, the common areas, the fishing, the pressure on the fishing, and strangers coming back that we have no clue who they are. Oh, so-and-so said. Like one of our people came and told, she doesn't even live there, told the foxhound people, the fox hunting people, they could come through our neighborhood. And we had to address that as a HOA. The owners are responsible for rules, policies, activities. I'm concerned about trash, which attracts bears, which all of you know is an issue. Like I said, if there's a problem, who do we call? And I would like to state that Rappahannock needs more families. And this is an area that they can afford. We've recently had 2 families move in with a group of kids. They're coming to Rappahannock schools. That's our biggest employer in this county. So, long story short, you start approving one, how many more are we going to approve? This will be 10% of this little community will be open for strangers. Are you going to approve the other 2 that are going to be coming up? And then how many beyond that? I live right there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hello. My name is Janice Smith Dingus, and I live at 314 Pine Drive, which is right next door. Everything's already been said, so I'm not going to repeat myself. I know that we do have a lawyer for our association, and I think our president should contact him to see the legalities, because I was with the understanding that they were single-family houses. I've lived there 27 years. My father helped me build the house, and I love the quiet. I'm retired from Fauquier Hospital as a respiratory therapist, and I love my quiet. So, and I'm just more worried about fire pits than anything, because there's no ordinance, all the dead timber that's around. I'm really concerned about that. I know my daughter lives at High Knob, and they have to clear their lots, and this is a big problem. That's the main concern, is fire pits. Okay, everything's already been said that I had written down, so.
Great, thank you.
May I ask a question? I mean, you have a legal, for both of you, that's it. I mean, it's a regular HOA, it's not a road maintenance agreement type thing?
No.
We do maintain the roads.
Right, we pay
and
for
all
it.
common areas.
The ones that pay the dues that are part of the thing, that like some people chose not to do it when we redid our homeowners association. But I've been paying them for, 20-something years, but we're responsible. I even stopped the school bus from coming through. When I used to work night shift, I'd hear this school bus, and I said, why is it coming through here? This is a private road. It's not public. I mean, I guess all roads are, you said earlier, all roads are public. But this is private. This is a private single-family residence. So I just, like she said, it would just change the whole atmosphere of the lake.
Thank you.
And I love it there.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Michael Schaefer, and I've recently purchased a house at 262 Main Street here in Washington, Virginia. Julian Weichel, who's made this request, actually works for me and has worked for me for 7 years. We are based in Washington, D.C., and we work out of Washington, D.C. He's an extremely responsible person. My brother ran a vacation rental business in Washington, D.C., and we had a very, very high standard of operation. Julian's primary purpose of buying this place is for his use, with occasional use for as a vacation rental. I've been to the house a couple times. It's a small house. It's only a one-bedroom house, so there's not going to be multiple cars in a one-bedroom house, and it does have off-street parking for probably at least 2 cars. So I can certainly understand the neighbors' concerns, and I think it's incumbent probably upon the HOA to come up with guidelines and regulations for anybody. I mean, I have a house that I'm doing here in town, and I may want to let people use my house. People have a right to their, private property, and I'm sure these people that live in this community probably lend their house to friends too. So there has to be a standard that's set, and ultimately the responsibility is on the homeowners to make sure that they're being responsible for their guests, whether they're invited guests or whether they're renting their house. And there should be standards, and a way a lot of this is handled is by, liability insurance. Each person should have liability insurance that rents their property, and it should protect the HOA. So I think in this particular situation, it's incumbent upon the HOA to come to an understanding on how this protects all the unit owners, not only for people that may want to occasionally rent their house, but even if they have guests, and how they comply with that. So I think there should be some basic rights to property, but also to protect your neighbor and be careful. And from my experience with Julian, he's extremely responsible. He's not like an investor that bought this house and he's going to have it, loaded up with people all the time and be putting more people in than the house can accommodate. And he's bought it for himself, and he's working to improve the house in the neighborhood. And he's also somebody who's very active in the community. So I think he will be an asset to the community, and I think he'll be responsible in the way he manages his property.
Thank you for that. Just for the benefit of everybody who might not have been through this process, in some jurisdictions they refer to this process that we're going through as also kind of a conditional zoning, because we are talking about a non-by-right use. So it is certainly, although we are an advisory-only body, it's certainly within our responsibilities and our common practice to recommend conditions if that seems to mitigate the requirements. So I don't disagree with anything you said, but I just, for the benefit of the interested, I wanted to share that that's kind of the business we're in. Anyway, any other comments before I close the public hearing? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to state that no one contacted me. I'm retired. I'm getting on the UVA organ transplant list. I'm available. That next door neighbor has metastatic breast cancer and couldn't be here because of her chemo. And someone should have handed out her letter.
I think we did receive some correspondence on this.
I just wanted to make sure that was
great. Yeah, thank you.
I'm just saying I was available.
Understand. Any other public comments? All right, then I will close the public hearing. I blew this the last time, but I'm going to try again. Mr. Atkins, I believe this is in your district. Would you like to go first, or have to take the prerogative of going last?
I'll go last.
No one's helping me tonight. Would anyone like to comment or have questions, discussion?
Yeah, you know, one comment that I had was that usually when the septic is approved for one bedroom, we restrict the number of occupants in the tourist home to 2 people. And that might help with the HOA concerns.
Thank you for that. I have just a couple of kind of logistical questions about this. I just happened to notice on the agenda, it refers to the parcel as 235, and on the application, there are 2 numbers referenced. One is 236 and the other is 2317. So I thought I had a question about what's the relevance. Maybe you could clarify that. And then I assume that the 235 is maybe just a typo. But
our lot, we have 2 lots. The house, I think, is on 4, and then there's a vacant lot right next to us, which is 5. So, I mean, the house is on 4, so that's, I thought that was what we
So 306 is, and 309, so one of those is vacant?
No.
That's the adjoining land.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Confused there.
Yeah, I am the one that's confused. So it is 235, that clears up everything. So what is, no, I'm sorry. It is totally my confusion, no one else's.
It's never happened before.
Never has. 308 is the address, and we have the neighbors.
Yeah.
All right. Would anyone else like to say something relevant?
Yeah, I would. Don't mind. So, let's talk about the road standards here. So, Michelle, this is what type road?
This is a private, these are private roads.
And it has to meet what type of standards?
Type 2.
Type 2. Can you read that to us? It goes more than just the width.
Right. Give me just a second.
It's got shoulders and ditches on it.
While you're doing that, I will say that I did drive back there today. I assume, I think is your house is the one that's sort of in the loop in the road, up inside the road, is that?
No. I am, you have the property.
Yeah.
And you have the beautiful blue house up on top with the
Yeah.
nice ramp. I am the cedar house.
Okay.
That's
So
looking
you're on
out
that
into
side.
the trees that's currently got under construction.
Oh, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
This subdivision is kind of interesting here. I think it was platted in 1959, and the original owners, I had done some research on it years ago, the original owners filed bankruptcy, and the property was foreclosed on and sold at the time. And coming forward, it seems like everybody that was trying to maybe get a foot in Rappahannock and didn't have a lot of resources kind of went to Rappahannock Lakes and built modest housing units. And, you know, they were always the least expensive in the county. When I first came here in 1980, there was units in there that were $30,000. And now it seems like the houses in there are being picked up by out of the area people that are really spending a lot of money and turning them into little flush little flats. And I think there was one sold in there a couple months ago for over $200,000. I think it was only 400 square feet. And was that yours?
No.
Yeah. It sold for over $200,000, and it really didn't even have a bedroom in it. It was a 0-bedroom house. So it's taken on a whole new atmosphere now.
So I pulled up measuring the type 2 road standards.
So anyway, you're driving through this subdivision as there's different conditions of that road, and as some of the citizens spoke, there's places where you really got to pull over. There's difficulty with fire and rescue, and Michelle said she went down there, and at the entrance it was 14 foot, and I truly believe it was, but I'm more concerned about the conformity of the whole road, and I think we need something from a civil engineer, basically speaking to the conformity of this road to the standards. I think it's beyond staff's ability to say that there's conformity 80% or in excess of 90% or something, that the road meets these standards. So you know, I know there's been applicants that have been put through this and they brought their private roads up to these standards. So I think with this neighborhood being so tightly congested that we need at least a CE to comment on the roads.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. I did close the hearing, did I not? Okay, thank you. Other comments from the commissioners? Or questions?
Yes. I'd like to believe I reluctantly went along with the last tourist home in Rappahannock Lakes. I know way before I was on the board, I came and complained about one in Chester Gap, because I felt it didn't make sense in a subdivision, in a neighborhood. Being the other neighborhood, Rappahannock Lakes, very similar, tight-knit community, and what we have is access to a fire trail that leads up to the Appalachian Trail. So we've got strangers on that road all the time. But at least they've got straight in, a little bit of parking, straight out. Some people leave their cars overnight. Not a big deal, but I really thought coming into this that we were going to have to show this the same consideration as that prior one. And after reading Lori Smith and Mark Reinhardt's letters, they mentioned 2 other Airbnbs possibly in this already. And I remember one, and I remember a lady complaining before and saying if she were here in 2005, she would have submitted, she'd have complained back then. So are there other permitted tourist homes aside from like the
I know of one other permitted tourist home.
And I think we need to get to the bottom of that. I was curious about the HOA thing because it seemed to me that the best way to go about this in the future is to put it in your documents that this is not a permitted use here in this neighborhood. I think that should be the first thing you guys need to discuss at your next meeting. I don't think it's going to have any bearing on this one, but it may have bearings on future ones for sure. I was trying to figure out how can you say no to this gentleman, but yes to the other person before. But when you read Mark Reinhardt's description of how sometimes the property's being left, the trash being left all over the place, the lake being destroyed or whatever, the roads are definitely an issue, but I don't like them in the neighborhoods. I really don't. I don't like them in these subdivisions. I don't like the owners that are away and don't have to worry about it. And I think there's to address Mr. Schaefer's point, I think there's a difference between letting people use your house and charging people to rent your house. I think that's why we're here. I don't think anybody can stop you from letting your friends from DC come out there anytime. If you start charging them, that's a different story. And that's all I got to say about that.
Ms. Ritter, do you have anything to add?
Well, the trash issue, it seems to me, one of the issues is how are you going to manage this property and how will you ensure that there isn't a lot of trash or fires or all of the other concerns that the neighbors have.
Sure. Well, like Michael said, I'll be visiting and staying at the house. I mean, could be every week, maybe every couple of weeks, but I'll be coming. This house is my pride and joy. I'm doing work to it, just, cleaning it up. It hadn't been lived in 2 years. It was a sad story with the previous owners, and I'm just doing what I can to clean it up and make it, really beautiful for the neighborhood. So that's one thing. Now, with, if there's someone that's going to come in and stay, there's going to have to be someone to come clean it up and, make sure the house is ready. And there's, you know, I'll be charging deposits, and the cleaner will be looking at the house, looking at trash left out if there is, and there, you know, they'd be a fine, and I'd pay the cleaner to clean it up, and this would be right after every person checks out. So, also, I mean, to that point, the other one that's in the neighborhood is across the lake, but they're a 4 or 5 bedroom house. Again, this is just a 1-bedroom house with a single car, you know, coming in to the neighborhood. And we have parking spaces off the road. And I had to speak with the president recently and had a nice chat with her and talked with her about what are things I could do in the neighborhood or do things, including putting no parking signs on my lot just to make extra sure. But I, you know, believe I'll keep, you know, everything clearly labeled and make sure people know that, you know, they follow the rules and there'll be consequences if not.
And will you have a property manager that's nearby, like closer than DC?
I've been looking into that. I'm still not decided. I mean, I can manage a property myself. I understand your concern about that. I also plan to have some security precautions in place, having a camera, you know, on the property to make sure that, you know, there's no one there, and maybe a security system, things like that. So, you know, it will be as maintained, and as well as remote smoke detectors. I don't have gas in the house, so I guess I don't need carbon monoxide, but Wi-Fi ones that can alert me so when I'm not there. So I think there's a lot of things there that will help keep it, you know, clean and maintained. And, you know, if I'll be coming out every week or couple weeks, and but there is a cleaner that's constantly coming after each booking, that is my assurance that, you know, it is left in proper condition.
Are you participating in the HOA?
Not currently. I mean, I've only.
We will be.
I'd like to. Yeah. I mean, I'm planning to. I know we have elections coming up, and I was talking to the president about the different roles, and so I don't know exactly.
So you haven't paid any dues? They weren't paid at closing or anything like that?
Oh no, I mean, I pay dues. I actually have to check.
I didn't mean physically be a board member.
Oh
no.
I pay. Yeah, I'm paying dues definitely for both the lots. I am confused. I'd like to clarify about that. Another point, because as far as I understand, it's the second lot that I have, and I actually pay for that lot as well.
You just bought the place. So.
Yeah, like 2 months ago. So.
Mr. Henry, did you want?
Yeah. So let's talk about one thing here. You know, this is just slightly outside the realm of being an administrative approval. We have talked about before about giving Michelle the ability to do administrative approvals for that. That simply means you got a checklist, just like when you build a house. You go down, you check every one of these items, and if you check these items, they pass, you get the permit. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, the issues of there might be trash and you know, who's going to be managing it and what somebody's doing across the lake and these hypothetical things that may occur, you know, is not basis to say no here. So what we have to look at is what is required, and the main item here for the public safety and welfare is the road, and we are already working on an ordinance about roads and what they need to be, and this is a case here where you got a very minimal road in there, and we need to make sure that this road meets the standards that is required. And I think we really need to follow this checklist that we have, and this is a major item on this checklist that needs to be addressed. And the person that needs to address it is a CE. And so I think that needs to be done, and then once we get that, we can say this is okay, or these things need to be improved in the whole subdivision. And the issue of HOA, I mean, about changing the documents on HOA, that's a tremendous task. You know, you got to rewrite them. You got to look at how things can be changed now, what the time limits were on the old ones, and then you got to have a vote of everybody in there. So that's a tremendous amount of work that somebody has to undertake, and even the most active HOAs, it's a really super expensive item to get done. So, you know, I'm sorry y'all got an older HOA that, you know, I don't know what your situation is on the docks, but But, you know, that's what we need to address is the road.
I had two questions. You asked the first one, that was great. And I agree with Mr. Henry. I mean, based on, we want to be consistent, and I know these are apples and oranges with this situation versus the Clark Lane, but a lot of it's the same. So in order to be consistent with what we did there, I think we need to, you know, the same thing. It needs to be reviewed by someone as to, does it meet the requirements or not?
I just would say that I really do sympathize with the folks that live in Rappahannock Lakes. I have a dear friend that lives down there, and she's lived there since the 80s. I know it's a very private place, and it's a very beautiful place. And it is some place that young families or single families, people that were able to make a modest investment in a home, often look to relocate, and you got a lot for your money because it is so lovely and the lakes are there. I do think that it is important that there's a balance in a residential neighborhood, and you know, in our comprehensive plan, Principle 7 speaks to promoting only economic growth that does not adversely affect residential neighborhoods. So there is a line, I think, that, you know, we can make. I don't know where that line is. I do think, frankly, ladies, the best way to nip it in the bud is through your HOA. If you indeed don't want these in your neighborhood, then it's not up to whomever is sitting at this table now and whomever is appointed to the BZA at any given time. In particular, I do agree with Mr. Henry 100% about the road standards. And I drove up there last night, so the car that came by about dusk last night, that was me. And there's a lot of washboarding on the roads. They're not great. And we also need to consider whether emergency services can serve that address effectively. And that is specified also in our comprehensive plan, item F. The development is adequately served by and does not overburden emergency services. So I think that goes hand in glove with the civil engineering. Look at the road, make sure that fire and rescue can get back there.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Atkins.
Yes, I agree pretty much with everything that's been said here. I do have a concern with the road. The road it's not up to standards. It may at one time be built to some type of standard, but it's not being maintained any kind of a standard. It's not wide enough in places, but pass, and you have to, somebody's got to back up, and that's not a good situation. In a tourist home, I feel only adds to that looking for an accident to happen, because you got a tourist coming in there is not familiar with that area. They have, and on a lot of our back roads and all in this county, you need more experienced drivers, people that live in the community, know the road, not some tourists that's coming in here in a Jaguar or BMW flying down the road. And that does happen. So that's my concern with that. And, you know, another thing that I look at these tourist homes in a neighborhood, we have a need in our county for affordable housing. We have teachers that don't have housing in our own county. We have deputies that are living in Warren, Culpeper County, because they can't get a home here. Those people should be able to have a home in the county that they're serving, working in. So in this case, I'd rather see this facility, this home, be for a single-family dwelling, that someone, again, that is living, working in this county, and at this time, not able to to have a home, a house in this county. So that's the way I look at that. And nothing against what, you know, what you gentlemen are looking at and everything. And yes, I understand that you would like to have your friends come from DC or in all of the Virginia area come out and experience some of this too. And I have no problem with those, but my heart lies closer to the people that are working in this county and needs a home.
Thank you. I agree with much of what's been said. I think there's maybe two things that weren't fully fleshed out that I'd like to address. One thing that is pretty different about this than most of our applications is the size of the parcel and therefore the amount of boundaries. It's 17,000 square feet parcel. So I think to your point, Mr. Henry, about moving these to administrative standards, I mean, one of the things we struggle with is that it's hard to anticipate all of the various unique attributes of properties in this county, but I do think on the point of kind of impact on neighbors and on to the extent that we want to do something, you know, I think the point about maintaining affordable housing is kind of incumbent on us. I personally think it's a little hard to do that in the context of an individual application, but certainly it should be something that we look at as we're, you know, trying to incorporate the comprehensive plan provisions as we look at that ordinance. Having said that, my primary concern is, like my colleagues, the road. So I think that's the most solid question about this. And I do think we have to. We do need to be mindful of our authorities under the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance in referring our recommendations. So that's all I have to add. Would anyone like to make a motion?
To your point about the road, you know, we already have an approved tourist home there. I don't even know if that standard existed then.
Probably didn't. This is a new standard.
Right. It is maintaining that road condition.
Well, I believe that, I mean, there are limits to our time coverage on this. I mean, the reason that this provision was added, and again, it's funny, I find myself defending this when I didn't support it at the time. But
life's like that, Gary.
It is, yeah. But, you know, the discussion was, and, you know, is that it was that, you know, these road issues are almost always at the center of controversy and concern. And so, you know, in terms of access and safety, both to the existing residents and, frankly, to the visitors, you know, we approved, and the ordinance now reads that, you know, a condition for approving the use is that the property be served by a road that meets the Type 2 standards. Does it have to, or is there a provision that says it's got to be guaranteed to be maintained that way forever? I don't know. I don't think so. I think the point for us today is we're about to approve this. Does the road that we're going to approve it on meet the standards or not? I am confident that that is an appropriate consideration for the application. And I'm no engineer, but I would question if it does in its current form.
Well, okay, having said all that, you know, any approval is a snapshot in time. You know, things have to be legal at the time we approve it. What happens a year from now, 10 years from now, that's out of our pure purview here. Now, you're not a CE, I'm not a CE. I don't think we have any CEs on the board. I think a CE addresses this, and we'll know what it is. And going forward, that's a great piece of document to have in future applications here. If somebody comes in and say, okay, we had a CE look at the road 3 years ago, it didn't pass, or it did pass. If it did pass, we may not require it. or we may require an update to see if the roads are deteriorated. And we may have a different ordinance then too. But, you know, we need, because there's one already in there that was approved before, that's grandfathered or whatever you want to call it, that's not relevant. It's this application today and what exists today. So, you want to make a motion, Mr. Atkins? You want me to make it?
Yeah, you go ahead.
I make a motion that we table this application for 30 days to the October meeting to allow the applicant time to have a CE examine the road, do multiple inspections of the road to see if there is compliance with the road standards applicable to this application.
A second.
Any further discussion?
And would there be specific detail paid to?
What the CE should do, he should take the printout that describes the standards. There's a diagram in there, how they're supposed to be, and he takes that right out and looks at the road.
Right.
And that has elevations, everything. It's very detailed.
And I understand that. Just with this being such a compact development, I do want to make sure that fire and rescue can navigate on those roads.
Yeah, I think that is a general provision that we certainly consider. You know, so the roads, the type 2 standards are necessary, but not necessarily sufficient to justify the approval.
And I support your motion, Mr. Henry. I just want to make sure it also captures the ability of fire and rescue to serve that. And, you know...
well, it's a little harder to evaluate that. I guess, I don't know if we have...
Somebody from Company 3 could go out and let them know.
I would say this, Ms. Smith. I guess the reason that we did that at that time was to make sure that that standard that we implemented addressed fire and rescue. So I think we should leave that speak for fire and rescue, because you're talking about a different standard that may be subjective, and this is totally objective here.
I don't know with the close grouping of houses and roads in that small private subdivision, if that's going to capture the full picture.
Well, it does talk about curvature, grades, and clearances. So I certainly will support Mr. Henry's view that this was the
right. And I do understand that. I just want to make sure that's included.
Sufficient?
Can we require the applicant today and future that in a situation like this that they have to get from the local fire department and emergencies, get a letter of certification from them that their vehicles, taking into consideration the size and everything, can get in, maneuver around into these areas?
Well, just like I'm no civil engineer, I'm no lawyer. So
I was going to say, I think, you know, if you require that if the standard is met, then the standard is met.
But
the standard doesn't say you have to be able to get a huge fire truck down there.
No, but there is another standard, that is the general standard. So you're referring, we have a very specific standard for the type 2 roads, but we also have the general standards and the provisions of the comprehensive plan that say, you know, it has to be accessible to rescue equipment. So I think it would be hard to require a particular proof that isn't explicit in the document, but we can say that our reason for recommending denial is that it doesn't have that access, and then we're kind of putting the burden on the applicant to sort of convince us that it does. So
why don't you let what we've written stand on its own and determine whether or not this road meets standards? Here's an interesting thing. Okay, so we make a determination subjectively, objectively, however how, that this road is not good for fire and rescue. Okay, we made that determination. It goes up the chain. Board of Supervisors approves it. So they approve that this subdivision is not safe. So we continue to issue building permits and things like that,
Yeah.
and an unsafe thing. So you've opened up a whole can of worms with the liability for the county.
That's what I think.
So,
Well, I just-
I mean, this is one house, it's not a new development, it's one house. We should address it and not open up another whole package of issues here.
So, I believe we have a motion on the table. Has there been a second? I didn't, oh, you did second. So, any further discussion?
I would just say that any fire and rescue company is usually happy to come to your home and let you know things you can do to increase accessibility. And so I don't say that in a derogatory way or that to undermine your application, but it may be peace of mind for you with people staying in your home to know that they can be served by fire and rescue effectively.
Just 6 months from the fire station.
Yeah, there you go. They're good people there at Company 3. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, so I'm sorry, just in summation, the recommendation is to table for 30 days to give the applicant time and to get
a civil engineer to evaluate the road, to make sure that the roads
to meet the type 2 standards.
Meet the type 2 design standards.
As required in that relevant section. Okay. Why don't we start with a roll call? Mr. Schulin.
Aye.
Ms. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Sis.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Atkins. Aye. Two will vote aye. I guess you vote aye too. So thank you very much. I think it's a unanimous choice. And I thank you for your application. Let's move straight on, if we can, to the third and final application for the evening, special use permit 220702 Cardinal Springs, parcel 3801 Tourist Homes. Ms. Summers, would you introduce this application?
Sure. Adrian Burton and Stephen Ray applied for 2 tourist homes for the properties located at 8 Cardinal Springs, which is a 1-bedroom, and 72 Cardinal Springs, which is a 2-bedroom. They're both located on tax map 38, parcel 101. The property is 128 acres in size. It's own conservation. It is in a conservation easement. The owners do reside on the same farm parcel of land. In 2009, they obtained a special use permit, which they have been operating. If you see in my staff report, they did upgrade the road to meet type 2 road standards that's required by the ordinance. And staff has recommendations of a maximum of 6 people for the poorhouse and 4 people for the quote barn. No food service to be offered to the renters, and the permit terminates upon sale or transfer of the property.
I'm sorry, which of the structures have the permit already?
A special use permit was obtained for what they call the farmhouse, and that's located at 154.
The one at the end. So it's not. So we're looking for 2 more. Correct. In addition to the one. Okay. Okay.
And the applicants are present if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I guess, can we pull up a GPS? I guess I'd like to understand. I did drive up there today, and I got the 8 and the 72, I think, but I'm curious which one is already a B and B. Could you help us?
Sure, I would be happy to. And if you need any information on road standards, I've got it memorized. So Michelle can testify to.
It is a favorite topic.
Yes, I can.
Thank you for your patience this evening.
All right.
Would you just tell us
yes.
the experience you had with the road stamps? Because Rappahannock County is a small county, and I heard a little bit of that on the side. Just tell me the difficulty that you had in interpretation and things, so the board kind of knows.
So that when we had the road put in, we had Monomoy put in the road. So it was built to the type 2 standards. It was 12 feet wide. The issue that we got called out on was the crowning, because it's supposed to be 6 to 9. John at Monomoy said, well, that's crazy because if you try to crown it at that, you're going to drag the bottom of a vehicle, right? We had Wesley Keys come out. He did a very nice job, and we got it. In fact, there's pictures in my application if you like to see them, where we show the measurement of the crown. So that was a little bit of the challenge. And our other little issue, it's just a point of thing, is we're off of a county road. Our county road is okay, but it certainly doesn't have a 6 to 9 inch crown on it, and it never has. And so it feels a little unfair that we're holding people to standards on a private lane to meet a type 2 standards, and our county roads often suffer from that, that don't meet that standard. But as it may, it's fine, and it worked out. We invested a fair amount of money to bring it up to standard, and so I was pretty fascinated to hear the comments, and I'm sensitive to it, and I get it, and it absolutely makes sense. Anyways, let me answer your question real quickly. So the farm, it's 130 acre farm, and you just kind of follow that tree line there, is where it is. It's half cleared, it's half forested. It is the old county poor town. When we purchased it in 2004, it had the old historic farm manager's house. So this farm was developed right after the Civil War for poor veterans and widows. It had the farmhouse, which we renovated back in 2007, 2008, and we got the tourist home permit for that. We were the second tourist home permit in the county, I think, at the time. And so it's a duplex, 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit. We rented out to only one party at a time. That was part of our conditions. And so we've been doing that since 2009. Also on the farm at the time was the old tenant house, one of the last tenant houses from the poor town. And that sat for many years. We renovated that back about 2 years ago. As we've turned it in more to kind of a studio sort of place. It's too small for a kitchen. It has just a bedroom, a bath, and kind of a great room area. And then up at near our house, we built a working barn. And above that, there is an apartment, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. So it is that apartment that we're seeking the permit on, and the historic, the poorhouse, which is the 1-bedroom, 1-bath that we're asking for the permit. It is 128 acres. The poorhouse and the barn loft we're seeking on is about almost a half mile apart, because the road from between the two is right at about a half mile.
Thank you for that. So the state road, so the Cardinal Springs gets you out to the state road. It's 6 feet state road at that point?
Yeah, let me confuse things for you a little bit more. So the state road is 652, it's Poor Town Road. It goes all the way into where the farmhouse is. And you see a state maintenance sign. So if you drove up there, you saw the state maintenance. And that's still addressed as 150 Poor Town. When we bought the farm, we were 150 Poor Town, and then we built the house up at the very end at the top, it was 123. When we did the poorhouse and we went in for, to get it into 911, we were told the county no longer does A, B, and C, or lower numbers, because on our road up to the barn loft was 123A, our house is 123. So they retitled our road, which is, by the way, it is still not in GPS, and the FedEx guys are still having trouble with that. And the deputies were out just checking the signage not too long ago. So the lane now, the private road up to our house is Cardinal Springs Lane. So the 2 units we're seeking the application for are both off of that road, off Cardinal Springs Lane. The poorhouse has a separate entrance in, because the county road dead ends at the farmhouse, and that is 150. Sorry for that long explanation.
Well, it sounds complicated, but thank you for that. Do you have other comments before we?
Just, I think I appreciate my supervisor's comments about, the application. We tried very hard in our application to demonstrate that we meet the comprehensive plan and the goals of the comprehensive plan. This is a farm to, or more of a farm stay property. Our clientele is almost exclusively families with small children because we have lots of animals. And we do have cattle on the property. We have 2 families that run cattle on it. We have our own herd of goats and horses and mules, lots of chickens and ducks, and a big pond. So it's been a big attraction. We don't really compete with the other tourist homes out here because I think we're pretty unique in what we've got, and that's kind of been our niche of it. Andrew and I both live there full time, and we're around, and we are never not there, or if there is always someone there. If we travel, even on vacation, there is somebody there. So, and our neighbors are also one of our best customers, and they're very supportive of the application.
The one question I had was, it looked to me like you were asking for 4 people in the poorhouse and 4 people in the barn, but the staff recommendations say 6 people.
Yeah, I was going to I didn't want to call out Michelle on that. I think it's a little confused. The barn loft is 2 bedrooms, so.
I was wondering because
I would reverse that, because the poorhouse is very small. Like, you couldn't put 6 people in the poorhouse.
6 people in there?
No.
They're going to be small kids.
Yeah, no, we don't do that. So, sorry about that, but thank you. Thank you, Steph.
I thought the application was great. I mean, I've rarely seen applications that complete.
Thank you.
All right.
I do want to continue to give others, I don't know if there's anybody here who wants to speak on this application, but lest we lose total control here. Would anyone like to speak on this application?
I totally support this.
I will, on that note of harmony, I will hereby close the public comment period. One point to note with respect to the comment about the standard, I think it's pretty clear that it says private roads or public roads other than primary, state, or secondary roads serving tourist homes. So the idea is if you're not on a primary or state secondary road, whether it's public or private, it is to meet the Type 2 standards. That is the clear wording and the intent of the standard as written. And again, it was less about making you fix the road and more about restricting where these homes are in the interest of keeping the harmony. So I just wanted to add that point of clarity because it came up. Who would like to begin? Yes, please, Mr. Henry.
You mentioned, I think in the report, that the property's under BOF easement.
Yes.
Do you have a letter from them verifying that this is within their easement?
I don't have a letter from them. I have obviously the original documentation. The tenant house was there, so that was grandfathered in. They come out obviously and inspect every year as well, and so they have been apprised of all the construction. And with the barn loft, we had additional square footage. We had a square footage limit when we did the application, and so that we were within it.
Is a real partner with Rappahannock in preserving the county. They've got over 20% basically easements in the county, and I would like for you to give them a copy of your application and them generate a letter for the file that they approve, so that
certainly
nothing comes up in the future about it.
Will do.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
But to your point, sorry, just before you leave it, the restrictions are on square footage. There aren't use restrictions in your easement document as far as you know.
No. I mean, I know the template.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it would be an issue with the addition or the renovations that you did at the time.
Right. The limitation was on square footage of any new structures. So the structures that were there were grandfathered in.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or?
No, I don't have anything.
Yeah, I don't think I do either. So, let's see. Mr. Sisk, I believe technically this is in your district. It's not. Sorry. Well, and Miss Smith's, but Miss Smith is the.
Since he recognized me, I was saying that. No, I'm just gonna. I'm good with it.
And I'm going to help Tommy out and say I would just go ahead and recommend and that we send a recommendation for approval for this, and just to make a motion to enlighten our discussion, that we send a recommendation for approval of this application along to the BZA with the conditions enumerated in the staff report, with the exception that was noted by Ms. Ritter, that it should be 6 for the barn and 4 for the poorhouse, but with those 3 conditions attached to the recommendation.
Okay, I would second that motion.
Comment?
Yes, sir.
I would like to add the issue of the BOF letter for the file, please.
I'm happy to amend my motion to include that letter as well.
Yeah. And I'm happy to amend my second. Any further discussion? If not, I'm going to do another roll call vote, just for purpose of clarity. Mr. Schulin?
Aye.
Ms. Ritter?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Maybe
patience.
we should have put that one in the beginning.
I wondered how that did.
Yeah.
And the road ordinance here.
You're ready.
Sorry you had to go through that.
Thank you. I guess just moving on here, trying to push us through here. The next item on the agenda is a general public comment period. So I'm going to open the public comment period. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Yes, please.
General public, it seems road standards are suddenly becoming an issue on these applications, and I'm listening tonight, and I'm like going, there's a lot of questions that we've got to have some kind of standards to deal with the road standards, because it's like Rappahannock Lakes.
Yeah.
What portion of the road is the property owner responsible for as far as the road standards go? Is it the road that goes all the way back out to Ackley's Mill?
Yeah.
Or is it just the road in front of his property? That's my question right now.
Yeah, me too.
They're dealing with other DPAs. There has to be some kind of understanding, and it seems to me the county is going to have somebody that's the road standard person. Because none of us are civil engineers, nobody on board of supervisors, and there has to be somebody that can get up and say it doesn't meet the standard because, and that would be part of the information that we get, and we can work off of that. But for each of us to go out and look at the road and try to decide whether it meets the road standards or not, I don't know how that's going to happen.
Well, Mr. Michael, we just did that for you, because he's going to have a CE do that. But you're going to have that information from a professional.
But this time, my question is also, can we require that? Is there anything that's in the zoning or our rules or whatever that say that we can require?
Absolutely, it's part of the requirements. It's part of the requirements. You got to document that it's to that condition, just like anything else.
But what portion of the road?
Well, the portion of the road, I think, is pretty clear. It's any road serving it other than a primary or secondary state road, and those are all enumerated. So to me, that's pretty straightforward. Well, to me, I'm just reading straight from Section 6, and believe me, I remembered how tortured it was to get to this point of discussion, and we did have lawyers involved at the time. So that part is clear. I think your point is well taken on the requirements for the demonstration of compliance. That has been a point of some question, I agree. But did you have other public comments? Or?
No, that was it.
That was it. All right.
I'm still confused.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Just real quick, I was impressed by you guys. Spotsy is looking for someone to head up their zoning department. if any of you all are interested, they're desperate. Okay.
Thank you.
And we have had the fire chief out, he has sent us a letter to the HOA, and we are trying to fix the areas that were concerned. He took the truck and tried to drive through.
Oh, great.
And Pine Circle is
Yeah.
the biggest issue.
Yeah.
But right where we are is also an issue because there's nowhere to go. I am straight up a hill and Janice is straight down a hill. And he's down a hill and his neighbor is up a hill. I mean, it's like this. So in order to get, you're literally taking property away from us, which I know.
I appreciate you all talking about that, and I just think it's so important. I go door to door a lot of times in my district and talk to people, and one of the places that I remember very clearly pulling into, they had a house fire and somebody died, and you just never know when it's going to be your home, and it's very important. And Fire and Rescue is more than happy to help you help them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the other thing is the first B&B that was, or Airbnb that was approved was never told to the neighbors. The HOA was never informed. She snuck that in. She was on the board. No names. But no one was aware that that was being done. Okay? So no, there was no input on anyone. And if you go up Pine Circle, which is where her Airbnb is, you will see a significant, multiple cars parking in the middle of the road, parking in between trees. I mean, it's you cannot get a fire truck through there. But you're talking about almost having to take out houses to get up in there. So at this point, at some point, it's got to be grandfathered. And my husband's actually the deputy building official for Spotsy. And so I will talk to him and some of his crew and see if I can't get him an answer on the roads itself.
Oh, great.
But any code questions, call me. I am willing to sleep with him if necessary. All right.
I've got a whole army there. Yeah.
You got an army, you got volunteers.
Yeah, we're. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? If not, I will hereby close the public comment. We have an item of new business. Ms. Summers, can you help me out on this?
Absolutely. So the variance has been submitted to my office. The BZA is the ultimate authority in which they have to hold a public hearing on this application, and they are the deciding factor. Our code simply references the Planning Commission may offer a recommendation to BZA, and this is pursuant to state code along with our ordinance, and this is just your FYI copy. Again, you may make a recommendation, but you're not required to. The BZA is required to hold a public hearing here from the applicant and make the decision whether to grant a variance or not.
Thank you. So we're not.
You're not
We're not having it. We're not required, and we have no hearing scheduled on this. And do you have any kind of summary of the variance? It's just like a setback variance.
It's a setback issue, yes.
Yeah, I don't believe we have any history of engaging with those because they generally don't have the same kind of use and planning considerations. I suppose if it's a matter of harmony in the community around neighbors, that sort of thing, but usually these are more technical in nature, so I'm not particularly inclined to involve us in it, but I would be open to other thoughts by my fellow commissioners.
Is the owner here?
Yeah.
I was not aware of this thing. I drive by it twice a day, and I never saw it until I got the pack.
Once you see it, you see it.
Yeah, I can't unsee it.
Is it a new Is it?
It's just started.
So, yeah, it is a little bit out of the blue.
Our code says that I have to provide the planning commission with a copy of it, and that's what I've done here, so.
I recommend, unless someone from this district wants to make a recommendation, that we send this along to the BZA without a recommendation, because I think that you should really talk to the party involved to get a full understanding of the application.
Thank you for that. I'll second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. And now I lost my agenda. So the other items are informational. I have not yet scheduled. I thank you all for participating in the work session. For those of you who could make it, I thought that was productive. We slogged through several sections of the sign ordinance. I feel like maybe with one more we might get through it. I don't know that I'm in a position tonight to schedule that, but stay tuned. I think what I will do is when we have a little clearer timing, I will ask Ms. Summers to poll the group for a possible another date for a work session. And I believe, just for your information, at our joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors, we tentatively agreed at least to reconvene together in the October timeframe to go more deeply into the Berkeley report. Is that so? I think there's still some conditions that need to be met with respect to progress of drafting and that sort of thing, but I would just inform the commissioners to be thinking about that. And that's all I had. Is there, our next meeting is October 19th unless we schedule another work session, which I'm not prepared to do at this time. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I hereby adjourn the meeting. Thank you.